What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and yes, this is not proper Heavensward footage. I was going to use Heavensward footage, but then I realized, wait a minute, it might be a bit of a spoiler to some people, so I won't bother. However, this is captured after the release of Heavensward, as you can tell by a couple of DirectX 11 features, as well as the fact that I'm on Machinist. Anyway, on to the main part of the video. So, there's been a big issue the last 2 or 3 months that it really surfaced up again the last 2-3 days because of the early access release of Heavensward. So a lot of people were having a beef when it was first announced about 2 or 3 months ago, like I said, that access to Ishgard and all the Heavensward related content and Heavensward related areas would be, I'm using air quotes here, gated behind the main story quest completion. So basically, you would have to get to level 50 with a minimum item level of 90 and complete the entire main story from 2.0 all the way up to, well, from 2.0 in August of 2013 all the way up to 2.55, which I, as far as I know, concluded at the end of February, maybe March, a couple of months ago. Anyway, so that's the main thing, a couple of months ago. Now, you can argue, there's multiple sides on this. A lot of people are happy with it, a lot of people are unhappy with it. So I just want to go over both of them and get some other people's opinion, or not so much get some other, list off a couple of concerns and opinions people had, as well as my own, and one other related matter that I had with it too. So a lot of people are comparing it to other games. World of Warcraft is a big one. I've never played World of Warcraft, but a lot of Final Fantasy XIV players have, and a lot of them have been saying, and between what they've been saying and a lot of research I've been doing, the research is very hard to find because some of it's just so old, and there's so many expansions, and I'm not 100% familiar with the terminology and just the systems of the game, but what a lot of them seem to be, in at least World of Warcraft, a lot of them only seem to have a kind of a level requirement. Once you had like a level 50 or level 60 or level 70 character, you could go into those new areas and do whatever you wanted. There's a bunch of other games as well that people have played over the years. I know I myself, Phantasy Star Online, I don't think, it's been so long since I played that, I don't believe that had a requirement. Phantasy Star Universe, and then the expansion for that, again, it's been so long, but I'm pretty sure that didn't have a requirement. Final Fantasy XIV obviously does. And here's one thing that a lot of people don't really take into consideration. I'll give this a pass. I'll mention it, but I'll give it a pass on both aspects of positive and negative. So Square Enix obviously had another MMO long time ago, which is still going, Final Fantasy XI. Now, Final Fantasy XI technically gated all of its expansion packs behind the completion of the main story. Now, the reason why I argue with it and give it a pass, and the things that a lot of people forget about that, is because when Final Fantasy XI first released, it was in Japan only, and the level cap was 50, and the main story arc, it had several different missions as well, like mission 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, 2-1, 2-2, 2-3, and it would end at I think it was 5-1 or 5-2. It was either 5-1 or 5-2. So it ended at after 5 basically, and when it finally released outside of Japan, it also released alongside its very first expansion pack. So you could not get Final Fantasy XI Vanilla Edition pre-expansion pack outside of Japan, at least unless you got like a Japanese copy. But you could not do that. So once that released, Rise of the Zillard, which was the first expansion pack, was gated behind the completion of the 5th level of story quests. Now, the reason why I give it the pass is because that was not available to everyone before the expansion. Yes, it was obviously available in Japan, but it was not available to other people, say in Europe or in North America. So that once it did release in those regions, you literally had no choice but to buy it with the expansion, and just it was part of the game at that point. So they're the main things on it, really. I mean, why it has all that. But a lot of the people on, say, the Final Fantasy forums, when it was first announced, obviously people were going crazy because some people didn't play it. I mean, there was people out there who only have crafting jobs and gathering jobs at level 50. That's crazy to me. Now, I'm not trying to tell other people how to play. If that's how you want to play and enjoy it, good for you. You know, just do your own thing. I don't care. Do you. But I mean, it is a Final Fantasy game in a series that is renowned for its storytelling. Is it unreasonable to gate access to pretty much all the content, especially definitely all the new areas, but pretty much 99% of the content of the new expansion behind a main story completion requirement? Now, the main story isn't really hard to do. You get to level 50. I know, I mean, it's very easy to get to level 50. They've made it even easier since the release of Heavensward. But, I mean, you don't really have to go through much. There's basically 5, maybe 6 patches worth of content. I know it goes up to 2.55, but patch 2.5 and patch 2.55 were added separately because, well, 2 reasons really. They said it was because the story content was so big, but personally it was because there would have been like a 6 or 7 month gap with no content. So they really just kind of threw it in there to break that up a bit. Now, so, I mean, the story content, the quality is there, and once it got added every 3 or 4 months, it didn't take long to burn through, not even burn through. It didn't take long to actually casually do the new story content as it was added. So people that are like so far behind, maybe more than 2 patches behind, really wouldn't even have that much of an issue to try to catch up with it. So a lot of the people, obviously, as I mentioned, had gone crazy. A lot of people were for it. You know, they were agreeing with it in the sense that, you know, Final Fantasy is big lore-wise. I mean, they prevent some things for lore reasons. They have huge, rich lore forums, and there's so much detail in there. It's crazy, and a lot of the stuff is done for that. And I won't go into spoilers on this, but essentially what happens at the end of 2.55 makes perfect sense to the start of 3.0. So, I mean, literally, the only way I can describe it is, think of a door is closed from 2.0 to the very end of 2.55. You finish that last quest, they're about to open the door for you. That's all I can say. That's the way I can look at it. And 3.0, you do the first quest, boom, they open the door for you. That's the best way I can explain it without giving spoilers or anything like that. So we have the people who are against it on the forums reasons. I've listed off the people who are on the forums and in game in general. I see all this in game as well since the release of Heavensward. But I've listed off the people who are for it as well. I'll give my opinion on it now. I personally think it's a good thing because it's not that I want to lock people out of content. It's just I don't see it as too much of an issue. It's not a very hard thing to do. Even today, when, say, you know, you may be 4 or 5 content patches behind, it's still very easy to, or well, it's relatively easy to do. There's so many people trying to get through it right now, especially for Heavensward, that don't have early access, or that maybe have early access but don't have access to the content, but they still have access to 2.0. So that it's still relatively easy to do. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, in a Final Fantasy game that is in a series that is world renowned, again, for its storytelling, is it unreasonable to expect you to do said main story? So I personally think it's not unreasonable to ask that of their players, especially when the game has been out for nearly 2 years. You could literally get one level a day and do one main story quest a day, and you'd be done. So, I mean, I don't think it's too far to ask, too far out there to ask. Now, what the last part I want to bring in that I mentioned at the start of the video, but I kind of kept a secret, which is for a specific reason. I asked a friend of mine, a real life friend of mine, what he thought on the matter. Now, the reason why I asked him and why I wanted his opinion on it is that he has no MMO experience at all. The only relevant or slightly relevant MMO experience I could list for him is he once played World of Warcraft for 20 minutes. He sat through like a 6-hour install, played it for about 20 minutes, and I actually saw him play it for 20 minutes. He called me up to go up to his house when he was near the end of the install. I watched him. He played it for about 20 minutes, so that was it. He never played it after that again. And he played Final Fantasy XIV until level 3. So, again, 20 minutes in World of Warcraft, which is nothing, and level 3 in Final Fantasy, which is what? 4 quests at the start? 2 quests and like 2 mobs in his hunting log? It's absolutely nothing. So, I asked him, I explained everything to him in the, what the base game encompassed, how often the patches, the main story patches were, what they would encompass in, say, the amount of, say, story quests, the amount of, say, story dungeons, story trials, the amount of side content added. It wasn't limited to just that. And obviously, I included stuff like when Rogue and Ninja was introduced, because obviously that was introduced as part of the story in one of the main patches. And I pretty much covered everything. I gave him the lore behind it. I gave him essentially the story and the reasons for it all. I explained to him about 3.0 and what the story in that would encompass. I listed off several of the new features that are really only available to people in Heavensward. Again, the new jobs I listed in there as well, and the lore behind them, and the reasoning behind, again, air quotes here, gating them behind the new content and all that. And he said in his opinion, it sounds perfectly reasonable for them to do that. Now, he is familiar with Final Fantasy games in general, so he pretty much had the same aspect, or pretty much the same opinion on me on it. He figured that because Final Fantasy and the amount of effort and work they put into lore, the fact that they'd focus everything on completion of the story as it went along, he said that makes perfect sense, and he doesn't understand why people are upset and mad about it. Again, the reason why I asked him and got his opinion on it was because he has basically zero MMO experience. He just doesn't seem to like the genre at all. He wanted to try World of Warcraft because it was the biggest game the biggest MMO in the world. He wanted to see what all the fuss was about. He tried it for 20 minutes. I watched him play it. It wasn't for him. He didn't like it at all. He didn't like the fetch quests. He didn't like the combat, and he liked the art style, but that was about it. Final Fantasy, I wanted to get him to play it with me and another real life friend. He said it didn't hook him, and it just completely fell flat in every way. It didn't make him want to keep playing it. And I explained to him, I was like, well, listen, I mean, you're level 3, you've done basically nothing. And he goes, yeah, but it should make me want to log in and do stuff. And so, as you can see, that was basically nothing from him. So, we've gone over the whole thing, my opinions on it, forum pro and con, for and against, and we got someone who I believe has a perfectly objective opinion on the matter. Because also, I didn't tell him my opinion on it until after he had given me his, so I don't feel like I influenced that at all. So let me know in the comment section below anyway, what you think on the whole thing. Do you think it's right to gate it? Do you think it's not right to gate it in both Final Fantasy specific cases and other game specific cases as well? Because I'm curious to see people who play other MMOs and how those MMOs handle it. So let me know all that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter. Details in the description below. I almost made it through the entire video without a major fuck up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel. Now, if you excuse me, I will battle the lobby servers to try get back into Heavensward and continue on in my new main story quest, because I got a level 55 paladin that needs to get to 60.